And to put into perspective what's happening in Iran, we are joined by DP Shrivastava, former Indian Ambassador to Iran. Ambassador Shrivastava, thank you very much for being with us. Now, are there structural weaknesses in Iran, the political system there, the economic system there, currently, after, the US has sort of given them a setback, that is preventing them from bringing these protests to a quick end from a government's point of view?
Well, there are obvious structural weaknesses, and one is the dependency on oil export. Iran is less dependent as compared to Gulf states or Saudi Arabia, but still oil accounts for 30% of Iran's GDP and 55% of budget. They are also dependent on food imports. So these two are being played out now, because the sanctions have resulted in loss of oil revenues, and that has led to almost crash of Iranian rial and increase in the prices. There has been something like 40%, inflation rate is 40%. The Iranian currency has come down by 60-70% over a period of 1 year.
Right.
And this has affected the common man because, as I mentioned earlier, Iran depends on food imports. But let me point out that, you have to see the situation in the regional context.
Okay.
If you treat Iran as a standalone case, you get one perspective, which is not quite correct. If you take into account what has happened in past 2 years in the region, you get a more realistic perspective. Okay. And that is the sanctions against Iran, which has crippled Iranian economy and brought people out on the street, are being justified in terms of the nuclear deal. It was US which walked out of the nuclear deal in 2018 under President Trump's first administration. It was not Iran which walked out of the nuclear deal. And when the Trump administration came back, let me just finish. When they came back, the negotiations were resumed, but the goalpost was moved again, and the US demanded that the enrichment level should be brought down to zero. Under the nuclear deal and under NPT, uranium enrichment up to 3.75% is allowed.
Okay.
So this was again a second time the goalpost was moved. And just when the sixth round of US-Iran talks were to resume in Oman, Israel struck on 13th June. So there is an internal problem, but there's a very major external stimulus.
Sure.
Iranian people should be allowed to, decide their destiny or the kind of system they want without external influence.
Fair enough. Ambassador Shrivastava, thank you for putting that all into context. But, is there a chance that these protests are going to fizzle out due to exhaustion, fear, and probably the lack of leadership? Because, they are trying to present Reza Pahlavi as a unified leader. Is that really feasible at this time?
How long the protests continue, that's something we will have to wait and watch. And it's hope that the government and the bazaar, they come to an agreement quickly. But so far as Reza Pahlavi is concerned, I don't think he has any support. There may be, some slogan chanting, but Iranians have come a very long way from 1979.
So how significant is the use then of this method of internet blackouts, communication restrictions, and what impact does the international support for the protests have on the ground?
I think the government should take a lenient view of the protesters. It was stated by both the president and the supreme leader, but it has to be implemented at the ground level. But so far as international support is concerned to protesters, that is something which is highly avoidable because the support is coming for all the wrong reasons. You look at what happened in Pakistan 2 years earlier, 22 and 23, there were food riots. There was Imran Khan, the popular leader, jailed. There was attack on the army GHQ and Corps commanders' residence. Did anyone threaten them by military intervention? No, the Pakistan army was allowed a free hand. And in case of Iran, it's a different playbook. So I think we have to be careful about the making a distinction between the domestic evolution, which should be left to the people and the government to sort out, and the external stimulus, which has to be avoided. And this has a direct bearing on us. Since Iran trouble started, the oil prices have shot up. $1 increase in oil price translates into 14,000 crores increase in India's annual oil import.
Indeed. But Ambassador Srivastav, you keep talking about the external factors. Does the US's active influence also cause let's say a threat or a problem for the protesters on the ground? Could they pose a greater risk? After all, we don't really know the ground reality.
There's a US intervention or even, these statements of support actually rob the domestic movement of credibility, because there's a very long history of US intervention starting in 1952 when Mossadegh, the Iranian prime minister, was overthrown in a CIA engineered coup. And I think those memories are still there. So these statements of support actually create a problem for those protesters who may have a genuine grievance.
Okay. And, if we look at the potential scenarios, because we know that the government of the day is basically increasing its restrictions. I mean, if they impose the death penalty, for instance, on the protesters, will this be an invitation, for these external actors that you've been talking about to actually affect a regime change?
I think regime change you are right, that is the goal. And there has been, again, the goalpost has been moved. When the nuclear negotiations were taking place, it was stated that regime change was not the goal, but it is a goal today. But I don't think there will be a military intervention. I think, Iran poses a very major, it's a large country. It's half the size of India. It has a largest population in the Middle East, 84 million people.
Right.
So I don't think there will be intervention on the ground. But yes, the statements will continue.
So you did mention the Middle East and West Asia. How will these protests and the government crackdown actually impact Iran's relationship with its neighboring countries? Also the proxy groups that it supports for the medium term?
Iran was supporting Hezbollah. It still makes those statements. I think the Arab countries should be left to themselves to chart their destiny. And so far as Iran is concerned, now Iran's immediate relations, which will affect the region and affect the international oil prices in India, is its equation with Saudi Arabia. Okay. Fortunately, there has been an improvement in Iran's relations with Saudi Arabia since past 2 years. And this is a reason, despite the turmoil in Middle East, the war in Gaza, which started with Hamas attack on Israel, which must be condemned in October 2023. Despite 2 years of war, the oil prices remain stable.
Right.
And it remains stable because of the understanding between the two regional superpowers, Saudi Arabia and Iran. I think it is still holding, and I hope it will continue to hold, because if that breaks down,
Okay.
And if there are attacks on shipping in the Persian Gulf, this will disrupt the oil situation. Hormuz Strait accounts for about 17 to 20% of international oil flows, and the impact will be felt all over the world.
I'm afraid we've run short of time. Thank you very much, Ambassador DP Shrivastava. Thank you for putting all that into context for us, unpacking it for us, and helping us to understand it in greater detail. Now, moving on.